and I'm doing my line, because this is fairly simple. And then I'm going to select it again, fatten up my line a little bit. And then when I go to my, whatever you call it, my width tool, right there. If I want to come back, and so if I come over here, I'm going to get that. If I want to readjust it, I got to come in here and it locks on there, and then I grab that handle and then I can adjust it. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
sure.
Forgot about the handle thing.
Yeah, it just, you have to go back to the original one. And you have to be obviously on the width tool, and then it'll lock right on. You'll see it right there, boom, and then it gives me these two handles again. If I have something, let's see if this is working here. And I want to export it, I go here, File, Export, Export As. So desktop. So I pick what I want to do here, PNG, where all these different things, let's say JPEG. Now, let's look at this real quick. If I'm making something, because this usually is what's going on with almost everybody. You're making something and you've got things out here that you aren't using. So you got all this stuff off the board, you know, elements and things you're working with that you're not currently using. So you got all this stuff out here, and then I've got my main image here. So if I'm going to export it, I'm going to go File, Export, Export As. Let's just do this as a temp file. I'm going to go create. Okay, right here where it says use artboards, if I don't check that, here's what's going to happen. And here's where I can go 150, 300 other. I'm going to keep it at that and say okay. I'm going to go back down here to temp. And you can see it picked up all that stuff that's off my board, off my artboard. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
But if I do this, File, Export, Export As, I'm going to go to a JPEG. And now I hit Use Artboards. What it's going to do is it's going to constrain. I want to change this to art. Now, right here, if we're doing print, CMYK, if we're doing screens, RGB. So let's go to RGB. I'm going to say, okay, and it's at 150. I want to put it at 72. That's all I need. Now, when I go over here, it only used the actual artboard and it eliminated everything else. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you want to go to Export As. Now, there's other stuff here you can do, like, and we'll talk about this stuff later, but export, I could go export for screens, and then I can dial a lot of things in here. Save for web. And you can start looking at the color gamut stuff and all that kind of stuff. Or here's the other thing, just so you know. If I want to save this as a PDF, it's not going to be under export, which I always think is kind of weird. You have to go to Save As and change this to Adobe PDF, and then say Save. And then you have all these options here. So if I was sending this to a printer, I'd go to Press Quality. If I'm sending it through an email, I'll go to Smallest File Size. There's a blurb thing I probably added in. I don't know if that's there normally. High quality print. So I'm going to go to Smallest File Size, Save PDF. Now you have all these too here, by the way. Preserve editor or Illustrator editing capabilities. I don't care about this if I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm almost never concerned with that. Embed page thumbnails. Yeah, I'd probably get that. Optimize all these things. I can say save PDF. It's just telling me, yeah, it's fine. And then it'll create the PDF right here. And if I have a multi-page document, it'll create a multi-page PDF. So you started that, and then you sort of had that, sort of, right?
Right. I wanted to continue that line, but I didn't know how to connect.
There's a
the
couple
end.
ways. Okay, once it's
Yeah.
already done, I can take. Let me see if I can do it. Yeah, I can't do it that way. I do my white arrow tool. Why? Because the white arrow tool just selects points, right?
Right.
And I can loop over both, and I go Command J for join, and it'll join them. Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
And so, and then I could come in here and smooth it out. I could do that. Now, how I would probably do it is I'm working. So now I got a pretty decent line. Okay. How I would do it if I'm working, and it's going, what it sounds like it was going out of your view and you had to sort of stop and then move the thing and continue, correct?
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to just go like that, and then I'm going to, let go of it. And then I'm going to zoom in or whatever I got to do. Grab my pin tool again. And when I hover over this, you see it change, that little line changes. And that means it's reconnected again and I can continue on.
Okay, so it does connect it.
Yeah, it'll just, if you hover right over the end point with your pin tool, it'll give you that little angle line. That means click and I'm going to connect.
Okay.
Or if it's after the fact, take your white arrow tool, select both of those endpoints and just hit Command J. And Command J should be under right here. Okay. Now we're going to get into all these things, so don't worry too much about all this stuff. But one of the things I like when things are, and Illustrator to me is like I've talked about before, it's a little more straightforward to me than Photoshop. So under Object, you've got Path, and all your path tools are right here, okay, which we'll get into. But that one is Command J, and just remember it's for join. Now, here's the other thing with that. Sometimes you'll do a Command J, and it'll give you some weird message like that endpoint is part of a blah, blah, blah. And sometimes it's like you're trying to connect to something that's already connected to these other things, and it's like I can't connect that to this. It doesn't make sense. So it's sort of illustrated going, I can't do that. This is part of a group, and you're trying to connect this to this group, and it just won't do that. Okay, but if it's just a straightforward thing like that, it normally works. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That'll help.
Yeah, sometimes it's just it's grouped or something, and it's going, I can't do that right now. Okay.
Right.
Sometimes,
Another thing I
go ahead.
noticed was I didn't know how to adjust the endpoints without moving the entire line. Right. So let's say you just kind of wanted to tweak that endpoint, either stretch it or shrink it or move it a little bit. I didn't know how to do that because if I grabbed it with the white tool at the tip, it would still move the whole line.
Okay, hang on. Oh, wow, that's weird. Hang on a second. I'm going to clean this up. It bugs me. Okay, if I want to do just this end, I got to take my white arrow tool, select just that one point, and then I can move just that point around.
So you're clicking and dragging to select the point, then not just clicking on the point.
Well, I can go right here and just click on that endpoint. But what I always do is I just take my white arrow tool and just loop over it.
Okay.
And then it'll just give me that, and I can pull it out some more. And then I could come up here and I could adjust it again. Then maybe I could smooth that out a little more, and then I could.
I must have been doing something weird then, because it would just move.
It would just move
everybody,
the whole thing. Look, when you're first learning these programs, like by next week, all this stuff, you're going to be fairly comfortable in it.
Is there a way for the lines to touch without them merging, in other words?
Yeah, so that's what I was talking about yesterday. And by the way, I know that every second remember everything I said. So if we go, if let's say I'm building this is my drawing I'm building, okay? So let's get a fatter line here. So if you notice, even though I'm on the line, I'm on the pin tool, so it's not giving me my choice to fatten up the line because this isn't my line or my line tool. So I'm going to go back to my black, click off of it and click it again, and now it gives me my new control window. So now I'm going to go boom, boom, boom. So here's the problem when you get close to what you're talking about. Like if I'm going right here and I go, I want to go right there, and sometimes it'll keep trying to grab it. Then I select it and I go Object, Lock, Selection. Now it's locked. And now I could get almost right, I can get as close as I want to it and not connect them because it's locked. Does that make sense?
Okay, okay, so it has to be locked for. in
Yeah,
order for
pretty
that
much.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, whenever
Is
it's,
there a shortcut for locking?
yeah, Command or Control 2. It's right here.
Memorize that.
Yeah, it's right. Object, unlock.
2, got it.
Is it not locked? Oh, now it's not locked. Yeah, so if I go Command 2, boom, it's locked. Then I come up here and unlock all, which is, what is that, Shift? Option 2 or Shift Command 2 or something. Go, and then it just unlocks everything, unlock all. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lock off my line, which it already is. And I'm going to go, I'm going to make a layer, a new layer. Let's pull this out. And I'm going to go boom, and I'm going to put color Z just to separate it from the color that's already there. I'm going to go actually base color. And here's what I'm going to do. I am going to, here's the beauty of when you're using line. All you have to do is stay behind the line. You don't have to worry about anything. So I'm going to do a perimeter thing all the way around it. And I'm going to probably screw up here because I'm doing it really fast, but don't do that. Make sure it's nice and clean.
Are you just clicking or holding?
Clicking mostly. Because it doesn't matter if it's a ratty edge because it's underneath the line. Does that make sense?
Right.
Actually, you'll see it when I get it done. This part's going to take a minute. Hang on, I want to zoom in on this.
So in other words, when it's done, it has an outline.
Yep. And the reason I do this all the way through is I get students all the time. If I don't do it all the way through, they just, I don't know why they don't get it. I don't really understand that. So I'm going to go boom, boom, boom. So I'm not really worried about making any of these curves. I just got to stay behind that line. And I'm just going to go around the entire perimeter and I'm going to close that shape. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now we are closing our shape and we do need to close it, okay? So let's just say I did that. Let's turn off our line for a second. And I'm going to end up with that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And now I'm just going to go right here to my fill right there, make sure there's no line on it. And I can either go up to my swatches or, and I'll bring this up in a minute, but whatever, I'm going to pick a color and there's my base color. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so now if I add my line onto it, we got that, okay? Now what I'm going to do, now here's another thing. So I'm going to pull this in for color reference. So if I want to use this color or these colors, I can do that. So I'm going to go in here and go, all right, I want this little section. Now I would do this on a different layer, by the way. This would just be on that. I would have my base layer and then I would have my color layer. And that's how I'd start it. And again, I'm going to be really sloppy here. I'm making sure that that stays under my line because then it doesn't matter if it's a sloppy edge. Then I'm going to go right here to my eyedropper, grab that, and now I get the first section of color in there. See how it's all sloppy over here? Oops. Right there, it's really sloppy. Do not do that. If I did that, I could come in here probably. I would never do that. It's just not that hard to not make it sloppy. I'm going to hold my option corner tool, pull that down. Pull that down. Pull this down. There it is. See how it's doing both? I'm gonna go option. Boom. And it's still crappy up there, but you guys get the point. And then I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna block out all these colors. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah?
It's starting
Yes.
to.
Once you put the color in, do you ever go back to your line or you don't?
No, the line should be done. Line's locked off. And then I'm gonna go and pick, all my areas, and all I'm doing right now, this is basically a coloring book.
So
Not-
basically, it's just layers of different,
Yeah, I want it all on, I want it on different layers. I want a base layer and then I want a color layer.
So this is really when layers becomes your asset.
It always is. Okay, so you can see how I just go through here and block out all my sections, correct?
Mhm.
I mean, it's pretty
Yes.
straightforward.
Absolutely.
So now let's go here. I think I already have it here. Let's go. There's some blocked out color. Make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. So now up till, for what I want to see by tomorrow, this is going to be the last stage of it here, what I'm going to show you right now. So now I'm going to make another layer and I'm going to call it Shadow Z. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to go back to this, our lights up there. And now I'm going to go, same thing as what I did with blocking this out, only now I'm going to go, let's go, I want to lock everything else off. This is going to start getting weird. And I want to go onto my shadow layer. So I'm locking these layers off so I don't accidentally end up on one. I want to keep them separate. And I don't want to accidentally get tangled up in any of the stuff on the other layers. And I'm going to say, here's my shadow. Hit my command key to let go. Come back here. I'm going to pull in here a little bit. And again, just stay under my, actually, I'm going to come out here a little bit because this would cast a shadow. And it's going to be really sloppy, so don't hold me accountable. I'm going to actually, no, wait a minute, let's do this. Let's go all the way out here just to make it easier. I probably wouldn't do it this way, but I think this will just be easier. Because all this in theory could be in shadow. Although it wouldn't be. Now that I think of it. Now, okay, so this is a good example of this. This shadow value, you can see it's behind some of my color. I don't want it there. I want it above my color. So I just pulled the whole layer over, okay? And I'm going to go up to our windows, which is actually our palettes. And I'm going to go, might already be open. Hang on. No, it's not. If you notice, I'm letting my workspace here get cluttered. That shouldn't do it. I want to put this up on. Then I'm going to go up here to my windows where all my palettes are and go swatches. It gave me this. Here's a little thing, you guys. Sometimes your swatches will come up empty. Okay. You're going to go where my swatches go. If they do that, go back to your palettes, go past swatches, which is right there, and go down here to swatch libraries. And I just usually default to default swatches, print. Okay. Right now it's these and these are fine. And now I'm just going to pick a gray value right here. These are just gray values right there because I want a gray value. Remember that. Okay. And now I'm going to go to this other window right here. So if you want to, here, I'll show you. To transparency right there. So now I got another window here for transparency. Let's put this over here also. And let's put swatches over. So transparency, unlike Photoshop, your overlays live in transparency. And if you want to knock back the opacity of that thing I just did, it's here, okay? which lives under Windows where all your palettes are. And now I'm going to drop this to multiply. And now I've got a shadow value. You guys see that? Now I'm
Yes.
going to go a little, go ahead. I'm going to go a little lighter in value. So I'm going to pick a lighter value. Yeah, a little darker right there. And now here's the beauty of this. I'm going to go grab another shape. Like, I'm going to say that some of it's casting right here. And I'm not being accurate with my shadow stuff right now, but I just wanted to quick. And now I can go through that whole process again, but I don't need to, because now I can just take my eyedropper tool, pick this one, and it changes it to that overlay and that color, and it assumes the color value of the color underneath it. So I don't have to go find the color values and shadow values. I just do it that way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, very cool.
Okay, so what overlays are, if you don't know, and there's probably a better way to explain this. I was just explaining them in Photoshop this morning. If you have a shape on top of something, usually it's a layer. In Photoshop, it's always a layer. Sorry. The overlays, just in a transparent way, make it relate to the one underneath. So in this case, what multiply does, if I just take a gray, it just makes it transparent and pick up the colors underneath. That's what it does, okay? So as long as I do it with a gray value, it's just gonna pick up the colors underneath and look like a shadow, okay? And we'll get into some other ones later. Basically, to be honest with you, with overlays, I mean, I know a lot about what multiply does because I use it all the time. The other ones, I just go through them and to see what works. And that's how we do it. So it depends on what's on top and it depends on what's on bottom. So if I have green and some image on top and then blue down here, it'll react differently than if I have red down here and I have blue up here or something, okay? So it's just sort of a little bit of a, they just interact. They make those two layers interact with each other visually, okay? Does that make sense?
Yes, Professor, I have a quick question. I was writing, I didn't see. When you brought up the transparency menu, did you just get that off the Windows menu option?
All your palette tool sets, your tool palette are under Windows. They shouldn't even call that Windows. It should be palettes.
Right.
So if
Understood.
you have a tool and you want to go more in depth into that tool, more than what's up in the control bar up here, right? If I want to go further than that for a particular, and there isn't one up here for that because there's no transparency tool over here. These relate to these tools basically. Then I go to, they're always under Windows. So I go to Windows, transparency,
Transparency.
Windows, character if I'm working on type, Windows, image trace, window, you know, all your layers, everything. That's where it all lives. So that Windows, that window menu bar thing, that's all it is really. It's just mostly just your palettes. And then it's got a few things down here in this case. Brush library, graphic library, you know, blah, 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 blah. And then these are just the windows I have open. This is the one you want to see, right?
Right, yes, it is. But, and I agree, but I was just going on about that.
So,
And you know.
If you
so
eliminate her base layer,
Right,
so, and then if I eliminate the midtones, there's that.
right.
And then we can take off the highlights.
And I was wondering when I first saw that, how is she doing that if you're, you know, if you're just doing line work? But I see that now. And I also see
Here's the base layer. Here's the shadows. Here's the dark midtone. So she put in a dark layer, which I don't normally do. But that looks really cool. I
Yeah,
love the way
I
it's
love
stair
that.
steps right there. That's cool. You
I
know,
love
and then,
this.
then there's the highlights on it. And then there you go.
So she really went, I'm absolutely in.
Yeah, I think it's great.
And I see now
By the
how
way,
it was done.
Here's another little trick, real quick. So now we have this base layer, correct?
Right,
So now I'm going to make a duplicate of that layer. And I'm going to put it all the way at the, let's just put it right there. And now I'm gonna go, let's turn this off for a minute. Or, sorry, yeah, let's lock that and turn it off for a second. Wait, I get the wrong one. Oh yeah, because here's this one. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go with this one. Yeah, so I'm gonna switch the color. I'm gonna go to swatches. See my swatches disappeared? I hate that.
I do too. It does drive me
I'm
nuts.
gonna go swatch libraries, default swatches, print. There it is. And I'm gonna go back to my gray layer. And then I'm gonna take this layer, and I'm gonna squash it. I just grab the top handle. Now I'm gonna turn this back on.
Check that out.
I'm gonna turn this on, all this back on. And now I've got a little cache.
Oh my God.
It
That's
sort of feels like
insane.
it's mirroring the character a little bit. So all
Oh
I do
my
is take the
God.
same shape, squash it down and fill it with a different color. And then I could, if this was on a color background, which it's not, so it probably won't make any difference. I could go back to my transparency, put it on multiply, and it would pick up the color of whatever is on the bottom. Does that make sense? We just want to get some color in there and shadow values, and that's it.
Bye, everybody.
We'll see you in
Enjoyed
the
it.
morning. Thank you, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Yeah, very
Thank
much.
you.
so.
Thank you.
Enjoy it.